Hello, I'm Cindy with Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, and this is Speak Out on Stigma. Today we'll be hearing from Erin, peer support specialist from Community Medical Services. Hi, Erin, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, I'm good. So tell me about some of the damaging physical impacts you've experienced as a result of stigma, like relationships, finances, work, housing, medical care, and or health.
So as I was kind of, reflecting on this question in general, it was difficult to pinpoint exactly what I wanted to touch on because there actually was so much. I think that it's important to note that a lot of this stigma that I've endured is a direct result of previous incarceration. So as I, came home from incarceration and was trying to rehabilitate, take back control of my life, and change things, I saw a lot of disadvantages in a lot of different areas. Um, it starts with the finances as far as like little opportunity out there for felons in general. So it's not just like the work in general, but how you don't have anywhere to work, so your finances are no good. So and this even stems back into like while you're still incarcerated, feeling a bit stigmatized in the sense that, well, I'm in here as a punishment. I'm in here and I feel like I'm not as good as the next person. And so I think that either if that's what you tell yourself or that's the message you're getting from other people in work release in prison, you are automatically hired at a lower rate of pay than, the people in the community. You don't have much incentive to move up within the company, and you're also kind of getting some of your money taken from you while you're on work release from the prison so that they can pay for like what they call room and board. So you kind of feel like you're at a disadvantage already because of those things. And then obviously this disadvantage in the income creates like a lack of savings or money to even rehabilitate with. So then obviously like not just the finances, but the actual work itself, right? Finding work. And there were a lot of difficulties for me to find employment due to my criminal record. Because it's like a specific crime, or they read it on paper and it's like, nope, not that, next, and you see that happen a lot. And even if it's not like being told to you that that's what's happening, deep down that that's why. I've even had experiences where I was looking for peer support work, and the I had a great interview. The lady wanted to hire me, and it was literally the specific like statute of my crime that kept her from being able to hire me because they were county funded. And so they get to delegate who they hire and fire and all of that stuff based off of that. And so it was hard for me to even get that job role. And then once I did finally, find work in the peer support, before where I'm working now, it was kind of like you really knew that I was being taken advantage of because of what I had been through. Because peer support is so transparent, oftentimes your story gets told over and over again, including to the employer that's doing the interview. And so at that time, it felt like because of what I had been through, I was an easy person to hire and then manipulate into doing other job duties outside of peer support. So, and then that affects like your mental health, your daily living, your work environment. So, that's another disadvantage that you can see as far as like being stigmatized. So, you find the perfect fit and you still can't have it, or this employer is taking advantage of you, or you're getting skipped over completely. So, with me getting skipped over that one job where they were county funded and they couldn't hire me, there's this thing that's called the Rehabilitation Review Committee. And it's a great thing that exists that helps people, like to become eligible to certify or recertify if they once like lost credentialing or if they have a crime similar to mine. And that's great. However, this is just another added measure that I have to go through to get the employment that I want, that your counterpart in the community who doesn't have a felony wouldn't have to do. So it's just a lot of different things. And then, like when it comes to housing, um, it was very difficult. That was probably the hardest thing for me, because there's a lot of stigma behind that as well because of the fact that okay, well, now I'm coming home from incarceration and I'm trying to find some housing. I don't have a renter application record. I don't have a renter's record. I don't have any credit score. I look horrible on paper if they look up my criminal record. So how's this going to go? And it wasn't easy. A lot of the things that were available to me were in not the best areas of Milwaukee, which is exactly where I didn't wanna be because that was where I used to use drugs. So, I didn't wanna go back to that area, and then, there's also, like, the renter application fees. So if I'm starting to look for a place to live that's in a better area, well, now you're starting to pay those fees, and if you're paying this fee just to be denied, that starts to add up. So add that to the finances too. But it's like all of these things where it turns into this cycle. So for me, I had filled out multiple renters applications at multiple places, got denied everywhere I went. I even got so far to like do some showings at some of the apartments and still, no dice. I don't get to live there, anything like that. I don't even get to explain my story. So you really have to target like private landlords and hope that they, will work with you. But a lot of that, you don't get to tell your story. You have to pay all of these fees for the renters applications. You might not be in the best area of town. So it is a really discouraging thing, especially after coming home from incarceration. And like, and speaking in terms of stigma, it's not just previous incarceration, it's previous incarceration and drug use. So you really feel stigmatized at times because of that. And I had to write character reference letters to get into the apartment that I'm in now. So as a result of that, it was kind of like apply, I was denied, but the roommate that I was moving in with at the time kind of advocated for me. And so that allowed me to be able to tell my story not only to the landlord, but then acquire character reference letters and then give those to my landlord. So I feel fortunate in that experience. However, it was definitely a challenge. And then going to things like medical care, that isn't it's not so much the previous incarceration as much the previous substance use that you feel stigmatized on, but I kind of felt stigmatized from both angles because I was going through an experience where I was experiencing a lot of anxiety after coming home from incarceration. And so, because of that, I wanted to address it sooner rather than later because I didn't want to relapse. So, I had gone to many counselors, many psychiatrists, many therapy sessions, to try and get some stuff sorted out. A guinea pig to a lot of different anxiety medications. And in the process of that, working with multiple different psychiatrists and telling your story over and over again. And I think that in telling my story, speaking on the fact that I was previously incarcerated is important in terms of them treating me because some of this is anxiety is a result of that incarceration. So I want them to get all the facts, right? To treat me and help me. And I had one psychiatrist where it was an okay experience, but it was his notation of the exchange after the fact that I had read through my or well chart or whatever it is these days that they have. I'm looking in the app, I'm reading his notation on me, and he was so fixated on the fact that I had done prison time and what happened and how long I was there and all this prison stuff that when it came to time to treating my anxiety, it wasn't really addressed properly. And I felt that between the previous prison experience and the previous substance use, like I was somehow drug seeking in that situation. And when I had met with him after that and addressed that with him, he apologized and that wasn't his intent. But I guess that's kind of the reason why we're even really here today is sometimes that stigma isn't, malicious or something that somebody intends to do, but it happens and it is happening. And that's why it's important to talk about it. Because I feel like I could have addressed my mental health differently that day if we weren't so focused on a previous experience or circumstance that I went through.
Thank you for that. Thank you for describing the chain reaction that can happen with stigma and the cycles and how it can kind of reinforce itself and keep a person stuck and prevent them from advancing and recovering and growing. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences with that. Um, and so I also want to ask, does stigma make you feel discriminated against?
So in short, yes, it definitely does. To be honest with you, I feel like a lot of my life, I didn't really have to endure a lot of, discrimination or stigma. And that's awesome to go through life and not have experienced that. But as soon as, I had these adverse things happen within my life, you really feel it full force. And so it's definitely something where it's like you can feel it, especially when it's like something like just a basic equal opportunity that you're trying to achieve, like housing or employment, and you can literally feel that like you're being discriminated against because of that previous circumstance that happened to you, whether it was addiction, incarceration, disability, whatever it might be, like that your discrimination is happening because of that stigma. And so it's definitely like really challenging because I mean like really when you define um, like stigma in general, a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality or person, it's really like, wow. I know that just because this one thing that happened in my life is a chain reaction of how people are treating me now. So, having any given circumstance like that, that shouldn't be the defining thing of my entire character or who I am and what I stand for and things like that. I feel like just the idea of stigmatizing someone is as bad as or worse than the discrimination itself because now like okay, it's not just about like race or sex or disability, which are all horrible things to discriminate against, anyways. But now it's like down to like one specific thing that you've been through that people are judging you off and defining you off of. And so I think that it's really kind of just, it's definitely a challenging feeling to go through in this life and wanting to do things that other people get to do or get to experience, but know that you might be judged or shunned or we don't like you and we're just pretending or whatever. It's a lot, and you have to like rise above it and keep it going because you can get really trapped in that cycle.
Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think I covered just about everything I was thinking of.
All right, well, thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your views on stigma. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Speak Out on Stigma is a forum to raise awareness about the harmful impact of stigma on those in and seeking recovery. Recovery is for everyone. Together we can eliminate stigma. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. Thank you and have a great day.